Woody Allen, one of the classical cynics, and feeding into all the stereotypes about religion, always has this very tongue-in-cheek cynicism about faith, where he has this open-minded, liberal-thinking granddaughter sitting at her grandfather's Seder table, and she says to her grandfather, you know, you're such a fanatic. You're such a fanatic that if you had to choose between God and the truth, which one would you choose? You hear the question, between God and the truth. And the grandfather, without missing a beat, says, of course, God. Which one would you have to choose between God and love? Of course, God. This is the classic modern Western distortion of what true religion and spirituality is, because for one simple reason. Most of us, many of us, have experienced religion as anything but love. Religion was about imposition, about condescension, judgment, punishment, punitiveness, not about love, but religion equals love. They'd say religion actually equals hate, many would say. Definitely judgmentalism, divisiveness. So that's why it's vital to distinguish what people's perception and what it actually is. So the way I would put it, I would simply cite a Talmud. One of the most famous Talmudic passages is the story that everybody knows, where the potential convert comes to Shammai and Hillel, two colleagues who had very different attitudes, both very holy and very beautiful souls. And he says to Shammai, teach me the entire Torah. I want to become a convert to Judaism. Teach me the entire Torah standing on one foot. Shammai says, you cannot teach a whole way of life, a system, standing on one foot. That's ridiculous. And he sends him away. He goes to his colleague Hillel. Shammai's colleague Hillel had a different approach. Not that he disagreed with Shammai. Of course, knowledge, studying Torah is a lifetime's journey. But Hillel responded, the famous statement, he said, that which you dislike, do not do unto others that which you don't want done unto you. That is the entire Torah, and the rest is commentary. Now go study. So the question is asked by the Baal Tanya, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, chapter 32 of Tanya, which is vital to this discussion. Chapter 32, in Hebrew, 32 is lev, means the heart. It also can be pronounced as love. Chapter on love. What is true love? So here's the obvious question. How could Hillel make such a statement that the entire Torah is based on love, or in the negative, don't do unto others that which you don't want done unto you, or in the positive, love your fellow like yourself? First of all, half the Torah is between man and God, not between man and man. So you can say all the laws between people fall under the rubric of love, charity, kindness. But what about all the laws between man and God, like eating kosher, praying, the offerings, Shabbos, and so on, and the holidays? What is it connected to don't do unto others as you don't want done to you? Question number one. The question number two, you see many people who keep Torah and are not necessarily more loving. Some of them actually are the opposite, as I mentioned before. Number three, you have people who don't keep Torah and are very loving. So the statement, which sounds so beautiful and poetic, what does it mean? So the Baal Tanya, in the most brilliant way, explains it briefly the following. There are two versions and two models for love. One is selfish love, one is true selfless love. Selfish love, which is often the standard in our Western society, is I love you are doing something for me, so I love you for that. It's a type of exchange. Selfless love is the true love because it's not conditional. A love that's based on some condition is not true love, because once the condition is gone, the love stops. What is true love? He says one word. I'm translating it into English: transcendence. The ability for spirit to dominate over matter. Someone that does not allow spirit to be more powerful, the soul to be more powerful than the body, cannot truly love, because it's all about you. True love is the ability to put yourself aside, transcend yourself, to experience another. to experience something beyond yourself and embrace it with love. And he says that is the entire Torah. The Torah did not come to give us laws. The Torah came to teach us love, to teach us how to get beyond your ego, beyond self-interest, beyond your own parameters, and experiencing something beyond yourself. As a matter of fact, when male and female, man and woman were created in the divine image, God separated them, but then they're drawn to each other because the goal is to ultimately, human romance is about being a model and a reflection of the romance with God, for us to connect with something greater than ourselves, transcendence. So Torah is synonymous with love. And that's what Hillel was saying. Even Shabbos, Kashrut, Yom Kippur, the laws that don't seem to be related to another are about refining you and making you a more soulful person and a less selfish person. So Shabbos will make you a more loving person. That's why there are people who may keep Shabbos, but they're not Shabbosdik. They're not loving people. So they're missing the point. They're following the ritual, the so-called religious part of it, and missing the soul, the loving part of it. Every mitzvah should and must make you a more loving, more kind, more generous, more virtuous, giving person. If it doesn't, something is missing. So that's what Hillel was telling him. It's all about that form of transcendence. Now, the fact that some people keep Torah and are not more loving is because, yes, they're missing the soul. They're only following the rituals, the mechanics. It's called mechanical, robotic Judaism. And the fact that there are many people who don't keep Torah and they're loving, well, if they kept Torah properly, they'd be even more loving because it would teach them how to grow and continue to grow in this process. So in that context, you mentioned, Shana, what happens if you love somebody, but the Torah says you're not supposed to love them, you're not supposed to marry them? Well, first of all, who determines what is love? We can love a lot of things. Some people love their drugs and their alcohol, and they become addicted to it. That doesn't necessarily mean it's good for them. So we're talking about healthy love, not just love. We're not just talking about arbitrary love that people just determine. And the Torah, being a blueprint for which God gave it, teaches us how to best love and what's the best manner to love. And that needs a training and education. Not everything that's our whim is necessarily worth loving or even constructive. So in that context, in that sense, love and with spirituality, or I would say spiritual religion, spiritual Judaism, spiritual religion will teach you to be a more loving person always if you follow that approach and not just stuck to a particular ritual or custom or tradition or cultural behavior.